The Honourable Member for Churchill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm pleased to rise in this House to be able to follow up on a series of questions that I asked of the government, specifically the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs some time ago, on the disproportionately high and, as we all know, unacceptable rates of poverty faced by First Nations in our country. I specifically highlighted the particular rates of poverty and the challenging life conditions that exist in my home province in Manitoba. Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to represent 33 First Nations, incredible communities, diverse communities, young communities, with much hope, with much energy. And yet, Mr. Speaker, these communities face undoubtedly, and it's proven by the research that's come out in recent weeks, the highest, the greatest challenges when it comes to living conditions. Many people in these communities characterize these living conditions as third world living conditions. Mr. Speaker, this is Canada. It is 2015. We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet the First Peoples of our country still live in conditions that most Canadians couldn't even imagine exist here. We're talking about homes that are moldy, that are overcrowded. I've been in homes where 17 people live in one house. We're talking about lack of water and sewer services. In fact, in communities like in Island Lake, where yes, there's been progress that has been made, but too many people still lack access to running water. I've been in homes that have to resort to outhouses because of issues around plumbing and infrastructure that simply doesn't exist. And I've been, of course, in schools, and we know that First Nations schools are notoriously underfunded by this federal government and by previous Liberal governments as well, where teachers don't have enough money to buy books, where there aren't enough resources to hire specialized teachers, where kids have to do with less simply because they are First Nations. Mr. Speaker, this level of inequality, these levels of poverty are unacceptable. And I want to point to the fact that there is an unprecedented conversation happening in Manitoba, but I would say in many parts of the country, about the levels of systemic discrimination that First Nations face in our country and Indigenous people face in our country. I want to point out that on so many measures, Aboriginal people fall lower than, or in some cases higher than other Canadians, but in all cases face greater challenges. And we know that this has everything to do with the federal government's approach to Indigenous peoples, not over just the last few years, but over decades. But Mr. Speaker, it's under this government, this Conservative government, that we have seen deep cuts, that we have seen a real neglect to treat Indigenous peoples with respect, to treat First Nations with a nation-to-nation relationship framework, to understand and work in partnership with Indigenous communities to be able to address the significant challenges they face. So, Mr. Speaker, when I rise in this House and refer to the levels of poverty, 62% of Aboriginal children in Manitoba live in poverty. 25% of Aboriginal children across the country live in poverty. I ask how this federal government does not see a problem. I ask, and on behalf of the people that I represent and in conjunction with so many Indigenous people across the country, I ask for federal action to deal with these unacceptable realities.